Hey everybody, Pastor John here from Turin Methodist Church in Turin, Georgia with a sermon for the week of March 8, 2026. We're continuing our adventure through the Gospel of Mark, one chapter a week. And we are in Mark chapter 10 this week. Let's jump straight into the scripture. I'll be reading from the NIV starting at verse 42, and I'll be reading through verse 48. Jesus and his followers came into Jericho. As Jesus was leaving Jericho, together with his disciples and a sizable crowd, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, Timaeus' son, was sitting beside the road. When he heard that Jesus of Nazareth was there, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, show me mercy!" Many scolded him, telling him to be quiet, but he shouted even louder, "Son of David, show me mercy!" Jesus stopped and said, "Call him forward." They called the blind man. "Be encouraged, get up, he's calling you." Throwing his coat to the side, he jumped up and came to Jesus. Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said, "Teacher, I want to see." Jesus said, "Go, your faith has healed you." At once he was able to see, and he began to follow Jesus on the way. So let's do a quick segment haven't done in a while. Still looking for a perfect sound effect. Here's a Bible breakdown. Down. Yeah, it needs a cool echo in there. A couple technical things as we get into how Jesus restores us, because there's a couple nuances to this passage that's kind of fascinating from a technical Bible analysis. Now, there's three accounts of this healing in the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, and Luke each record this healing as happening, and they each tell the story just a little bit different. They each remember different details. Mark is the only one that gives us the blind man's name, which is Bartimaeus, and his father's name, which is Timaeus. Now, Bartimaeus means son of Timaeus. Now, why is this fact important? Why is this the fact that Mark includes this fact important? Well, if Mark was, as we believe, the first of the Gospels to be written, it was written at a time where both Bartimaeus and Timaeus may have been alive. You could still go ask these guys. You could go to Jericho and say, "Hey, are you the guy that Jesus healed? Hey, or do you know this Bartimaeus fella? Do you know where you could find him? You could ask around. People knew him." Yes. And all these years later, details like this foster truth for us. When we think about that, they were putting a provable fact to their reading audience out there for everyone to read. It just gives legitimacy and authenticity to the scriptures. What can we learn from the healing of Bartimaeus? Well, we learn about how Jesus restores. Let's talk about a couple different ways that Jesus restores. First thing we're going to talk about is that we need to seek Jesus for restoration. This is, part of the process. We call out to Jesus, just like Bartimaeus did, as much as you have to, as loudly as you have to, and Jesus will respond at exactly the right time. Don't tire, don't give up, have faith, trust that Jesus knows what he's doing, and trust Jesus' timing. Keep seeking Jesus for restoration, and don't let the crowd deter you. The crowd tried to prevent Bartimaeus from not just reaching Jesus, but calling out to him, and the world will do that, won't it? Don't let the world stifle you or deter you or prevent you. Keep seeking. And in your process there, acknowledge who Jesus is. Acknowledge that Jesus is the true king. Do you realize that the king was Herod at this time? But when old Bart calls him son of David loudly and publicly, in the Hebrew world, that promotes him to true king, heir of King David. This is technically treason. And it flies in the face of what the world would intimidate him into doing. No, don't upset the apple cart, right? But we too must do the same. We must acknowledge that Jesus is in a position to give mercy. Jesus is the King. This is part of faith. We seek him out because we acknowledge that he is able. And this is what Bartimaeus does when he says, "Jesus, son of David, show me mercy." He is able to restore. The next thing we learn here is we got to bring it all to Jesus for restoration. Bring it all. Jesus asks Bartimaeus what he can do for him, and Bart replies that he wants to see. Now, in that tiny little statement, there's a whole lot to unpack. It seems simple, but it's actually quite big. Since he's blind, he's an outcast. Now, people assume, back in those days, people would assume that if somebody is blind, there is unrepentance there in this person's life. They are being punished. Now, if someone was born that way, they assume there's some unrighteousness in the family, and the family is being cursed by God because of some unrighteous situation. They're jumping to these conclusions and making judgments that they aren't supposed to judge, but that's just what people did. Can you imagine living with that? Can being uh, having that on your heart, knowing that this condition that you were born with may be bringing shame upon your entire family. His existence is relegated to begging. Every day he's brought to the side of the street, a little mat. He's led home in the afternoon. Right? That's all he can do day in and day out. His welfare and well-being are totally wrapped up in the compassion of others, which, as the crowd demonstrates in this passage, isn't always forthcoming. Right? Bartimaeus brings to Jesus a lot more than just an unseeing condition with his eyes for restoration. He is seeking to have restored his dignity, his purpose, his connection to society, his family name, his personhood. Bartimaeus brings it all to Jesus for restoration, and Jesus makes him whole, truly, completely whole. And then what? How does Bartimaeus respond? Well, he follows. Respond to restoration by following. That's our third key takeaway here today. Bartimaeus cries out in faith, and Jesus responds. Jesus restores. Bartimaeus follows. Bartimaeus doesn't even go back for his coat or his mat or the alms people had left him sitting there. Right in verse 50, he throws off his coat and jumps up and runs to Jesus. In verse 52, it says he began to follow Jesus at once. He was healed at once and followed. How many times after being restored have people turned back? Turned back to pick up what they should have left behind. Turned back to the comfort of the known condition of their suffering just because it's a known thing and the future can be scary or intimidating. When we respond to Jesus after we're made whole by his grace, through faith in him, we have to let go of the old and embrace the new. In our last session here together, we learned that the how matters when it comes to service and when it comes to leadership. And the same is true when it comes to following Jesus restores. Are we all in with being restored? And this brings us to today. Jesus is restoring us in a mighty and powerful way. Are we all in? At our little church there in Turin, attendance is up, finances and membership are healthy, ministries and missions are filling with life and vibrancy. Worship is striking chords and reconnecting people to the Lord is a priority in their lives. I hear stories from years ago when it felt like every aspect of church was struggling. And we've gone to the Lord for restoration. And Jesus has responded in a mighty and powerful way. And I can tell you story after story of people that have told me about restoration, personal restoration of all types that has occurred in their lives. They've taken things to Jesus and have been restored. What is our challenge? What is our challenge as a community of faith after we've been restored, personally after we've been restored? What is our challenge? Well, it's to follow. You keep crying out to Jesus, you give it all to him, and you let him restore. You set all else aside and follow. That's the word this week from Turin Methodist Church in Turin, Georgia. It'll be a slight pause. I'm going to take a week off before we gear up for the busy of the Easter season, and I'll see you back here in 2 weeks looking at Mark chapter 12. Read 11 and 12, and I'll see you in a couple weeks. God bless.